Welcome to this video. Yeah, this is a new series here on my channel. It's about endgame strategy. One of the new series that I'm launching. It has no planned end to it. It's not like there are 10 parts or anything. I'm just kicking off with one example, and I'm going to continue with new positions each week, every 2 weeks. I don't know. I'm going to mix it up on the channel. Okay, endgame strategy. What does this mean actually? Yeah, what I'm thinking about is endgame positions or endgame, close to endgame positions where there are still some pieces on the board, positions that cannot be classified as basic endgames, where there is a clear known scientific solution to it, like king and pawn against king, where there is a clear result normally. It's just a position that is played out and has endgame characteristics. Yeah, let's start with this example. This is a game Capablanca with white against Tartakover from New York, 1924. The main point of this game arises after move 30, but I'm still going to go very quickly through the moves before that to get a feel what was going on. I think this is very often a good idea, not looking at the critical position, but also get an idea what happened in the game. Yeah, we had a Dutch defense. Capablanca is just developing pieces naturally here with bishop g5, nothing fancy. Yeah, and we see a number of very normal looking moves. And here Tartakover plays queen to e8. Yeah, very often this is an idea, getting the queen over for activity. Queen e2 and knight e4. This simplifying maneuver. Yeah, after bishop e7, he flicked in this intermediate move with an attack on the queen. So white needs to recapture first. Queen takes. Yeah, and I think this position is about equal. White is maybe a bit more comfortable due to a space advantage, but it's nothing special. This capture on f3 is a bit, yeah, is an original solution, giving up the bishop here for the knight. But what he wants to do is he wants to get this knight to a5 and maybe attack the pawn on c4. However, there is not much. It's not a big chance that black is going to win the pawn with this kind of idea. It is safely protected. And white will always have ideas with e4. But okay, let's see what happens. Yeah, Capablanca is playing f4 here. Interesting move, blocking any e6, e5 ideas. Right, a5, and he's going back. And d6 now. Yeah, what white wants to do is to play e4, and he does so here to open up the e-file and put some pressure on the e6 pawn. The rook is protecting though, or both rooks are protecting the pawn. The whole thing here is yeah, maybe a bit more comfortable for white, but there's nothing terrible yet that black has done. You have got some strengthening moves. g3, that's a very typical preparation move. It supports the pawn on f4, and it might prepare h4, h5, which is a typical way to make some headway on the king side. Yeah, black is just shuffling a bit while white is advancing. Still nothing terrible happened. d5, an interesting move, and maybe slightly debatable move. Black is in a way losing its patience, his patience, and opens up the position. Also in the process allowing white to get rid of his double pawn. We now have those piece trades, which was obviously the idea that Tartakover had. He wanted to defend by simplification. However, in this position, it is quite apparent that this bishop on d3 is now a pretty good piece. Yeah, it has some effect both on the queen side and on the king side. The king side part is more important, of course, because of this move. This pawn break here, h5, attacking the g6 pawn and putting pressure on the king side. White here is definitely a little bit better. He can attack this weakness on g6, while black has no clear counter-attacking idea. However, he's defending well. Rook f6, defending this weakness from the side. Capablanca captures and now occupies the open h file. King f8. Yeah, this is designed to keep the pawn here protected. Rook h7, attacking on the 7th rank, very important motif of course, and rook c6. Black is setting up a counter attack on the c3 pawn. So we actually managed to initiate a counter play. g4. White is advancing on the king side. He's got 2 pawns against 1 pawn, so he should use his advantage there. Were there other moves? Yes, rook d7 was also a good move. But g4 is perfectly okay. Knight c4 was played. Black also has alternatives. He can play knight b3, for example, initiating maybe also this move. But the main point of all this is coming later. Knight c4 and g5. That's very important. White is not trying to play f5 here to get a passed pawn, which would be okay. The passed pawn is nice to have, but it also would help black to get rid of his weakness on g6. What white wants to do is, with g5, wants to fix this weakness on g6. This weakness is now permanent and always needs some attention. Black is playing this check on e3. King f3. And now we come to a very critical position in this game. How should black play? His knight is attacked on e3, and it obviously has to move. There is no alternative to that. And the knight only has 2 really sensible squares. It can go to f5 or to d1. And it turns out that Tartakover went to f5. And this is in fact a very substantial mistake. What he should have done is to play knight to d1 and try to get this pawn with the knight. The whole situation after that is also a bit better for white, but it is still a position that black can try to defend. For example, king e2, attacking this knight.
Check.
Here, king d2. And yeah, here knight a4 is not possible. So probably knight
Check.
e4 is going to be played. And we get this type of endgame where black can try to fight at least. White is better, but it's a fight. He went to f5. And now we come to the very instructive part of this game. How does Capablanca continue here? Yeah, he decided to capture the knight. G takes f, and now this is the main point of this classic example, this rook endgame example. The interesting point is white has the g pawn, very important passed pawn, very dangerous passed pawn. But how does he actually make progress? It's not so easy. If you just want to play with the g pawn, like g6 here is just blundering the pawn, but the thing is you cannot win with the g pawn and the rook on your own. You're never going to promote the pawn. What white needs is support by the king. And he plays the move king to g3. That is very, very strong. He allows the black rook to capture on c3.
Check.
That happened. And now king h4. And the important thing is, white now has a very substantial threat and idea, g6 and the king invasion. What should black do now? He played, in the game, he played rook f3. Are there alternatives? Black can also try to defend differently. What happens if he plays rook c6? We should start with this, trying to block the g-pawn for the moment. White then plays king h5. Note that white is a pawn down, but this is not really relevant here. Those pawns, for example, they don't pose any threat. They are just fixed on their squares, and white has a very concrete idea. He wants to get in with the king or play g6, king g5, king takes f5. The king activity is key here. Rook c6 is absolutely not sufficient for a defense. In the game he played rook f3, but what else is there? He could try to play a6 maybe. This is maybe a somewhat tougher defense. a6, b5, trying to use the b-pawn as a source of counterplay. If we check now, what should white do? There are two basic ways to play. You can play g6 or you can invade with the king. Let's say you invade with the king, king h5. Yeah, important is this is not leading anywhere, of course. The g-pawn just promotes. So black should push b5. That was the idea. We capture and go king g6. Trying to capture this pawn. b4. Check. King e7. King f5. And in this position, white has those two connected passes supported by the king, while black is not so quick. He only has the b-pawn, basically. He does not have connected pawns. White should win this position. Maybe continue a bit to illustrate the point.
Check.
And now maybe king g4 and f5. Or start with g6, also possible. g6, and there's b3 maybe. Okay, let's stop the pawn for the moment. Rook b6, rook b3, king g7, king g4, and now we are going to advance king f4, king e5. The protected passes are much more dangerous than a single pass pawn on the b file. Still, maybe this was a tougher defense, a6 and b5. Tartakover went, as mentioned, rook to f3, attacking the pawn. And white cannot defend the pawn. So what did he do? Of course, g6, going for activity. Black took with the rook with check. King g5. And now rook e4. Yeah, white has sacrificed two pawns. Don't forget that. But he's got this clear invasion idea. The rook is attacked on f4. If he takes on d4, let's start with that, white wins immediately with king f6. It's very important that, of course, white is not capturing this pawn. This pawn is not important in the at the moment. You want to play king f6 with a direct mate threat, setting up this attack on the king. Yeah, and now black has absolutely no defense. If he plays king e8, for example, we're already talking about a mate. Absolutely unavoidable. And yeah, king e8, we give this check and then simply promote the pawn. Very important, not take the pawn. Always think twice in rook endgames. If you have the alternative to capture a pawn or to get an active position on the 6th rank with the king and mating attack with the king, always consider that. The activity is far more important than material gains. In fact, in this position, if white captures, this is a gross mistake because of rook c4, when any advance on the 6th rank is answered by the check. And this is not winnable for white. White cannot win this position. He can draw due to the activity, but he cannot win anymore. It's very important. Okay, went here, king e4. And again, in this position, what should white play? It's absolutely important that white is not capturing the f-pawn, but play king f6. This is key. The king activity, invading black's position, setting up a mating attack, combined with the g-pawn. If you take on f5, black is going to take, and now you cannot win. He again has this defense on the 6th rank, or he is able to give this check from the back. This is also a reason why keeping this kind of pawn is sometimes referred to as the umbrella. This is the umbrella pawn, because the reigning checks that happen on f4 are blocked by the umbrella on f5. Very funny description, but it's very nice to have this kind of label attached to something. You can more easily recall it if you have it on the game. So the king activity counts, not capture the pawn. Okay, rook h8 is the threat. Black has to play king g8. There's nothing else really.
Check.
White gives this check. King here. Yeah, if he goes to f8, we are going to take here, threatening rook c8, and we have a position that is very similar to this. Rook e8 needed to be done. There was rook c8 threatened. It's a mating attack. All those squares are controlled, and rook c8 mate is the threat. Yeah, and only now, when the black rook was forced to get to this passive position on e8, only now we take on f5. And if we take stock, it's equal material, but white enjoys this fantastic pawn, and especially the rook on the 7th rank. To h7 actually. Yeah, this is not defensible. Yeah, threatening mate again.
Check.
Check. King e5. Yeah, and here
check.
White is using his big space advantage so that he can play g7. Yeah, the d5 pawn would fall in case of a rook g8. Tartakover played this one. Of course, if he allows this, White is taking here and simply wins the king and pawn endgame. Something like this. a6, king c6, b5, take. And white will promote the d-pawn. So king g8, and now we just take everything. Rook a7, king takes d5. Note that white started the rook endgame with first one pawn down, then 2 pawns down, but his superior activity allowed him to gain so much material that he now is 2 pawns up. And it's not only 2 pawns, it's the fantastic activity, the rook on the 7th, the d-pawn. So this is lost. Tartakover played a couple of more moves, but it was in vain. Here the d-pawn is decisive. Black has no way to stop this pawn. Simply d7, rook c8, and d8, queen coming. So what's the big point of this game? Activity in the rook endgame.
Check.
Here, king g3, h4, g5, f6. This is key. White is activating the king, and he's not interested in this material on the queen side. He wants to activate the king and use it in connection with this rook on the 7th. The second very important motif is the umbrella pawn. Not take the pawn here, but advance right into black's position and make sure that there are no defensive checks coming from the back. Very often this is the right approach. If you have this far advanced pawn on the 6th rank and the active rook, not take this pawn, but keep it there to serve as an umbrella against the back, the checks from the back. So very instructive rook endgame example, and I hope a nice kickoff for this new series. I hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, make sure to watch the channel. There will be new content every day. Besides the Blitz games, I will feature other things daily. Thanks for watching.